Hey there, this is MathCamp321 presenting the solution to number 30, Part A, from the PARCC Practice Test Algebra 2, school years 2014-2015. So keep in mind this is a Part A, B question. This is just Part A, and we're asked to consider this four-termed polynomial expression. And the first part, Part A, number 30, it asks us which expression below is equivalent. So what comes to mind, because I see that there are four terms in this polynomial, is maybe some sort of factoring by grouping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to group the first two terms together, and I'm going to group the second two terms together as well. But there's a little bit of a pitfall, especially when grouping the second two things together, because the third term is preceded by a negative. So I'm going to take it nice and slow. I'm going to start by just physically grouping the first two and the last two things together. Okay, so in this first step, I've grouped the first two things together and I've grouped the last two things together. And because the third term was preceded by a negative, what I needed to do is extract that negative from the two terms that came after it. So this is where students, I think, often get hung up. So you've got to take out or divide both the third and the fourth term by a negative. So that's going to flip-flop the signs for the third and fourth term. Now, if you're unsure of that whole process, what you could do is redistribute the negative through just to check that you have what you started with. Now, the opposite of 24xy squared is negative 24xy squared. And if we do the opposite of negative 20y cubed, we get positive 20y cubed. Now, as I look at the first two terms, or the first group I should say, I realize I can take out an x squared. So I'm going to go ahead and take out an x squared, and when I do that, I'm left with 6x minus 5y. Now, for the second grouping, I realize I could take out a 4y squared. And if I take out a 4y squared, I'm left with 6x minus 5y again. Now, at this time, I'm going to take just a brief moment to check by redistributing. If I distribute x squared into 6x, I get 6x cubed, which is what I have here. And if I do x squared times negative 5y, I get negative 5x squared y, which is what I have here. And if I distribute negative 4y squared into 6x, I get negative 24xy squared, which is what I have here. And finally, if I distribute negative 4y squared into negative 5y, I get positive 20y cubed, which is what I have here. So everything that I've done so far is correct. It still is equivalent to the original four-termed expression. So now I just have to check and scan through my answer choices, all of which look kind of similar to what I wrote, and then pick the one that hopefully matches up. And as I look through these very quickly, it looks to me like letter D is going to be the winner here. Letter D looks like exactly what I have in my algebraic work over here to the side. So the answer to 30, Part A, in doing this factoring by grouping technique is answer choice D. So now we're in Part B of question number 30, where we have to continue this factoring by grouping process. And what I think I'm going to do first is really distinguish between the first chunk, which I'm going to call A, and the second chunk, which I'm going to call B. Now, as I scan through the chunks A and B, I want to ask myself, what is common to both of these chunks? What can I take out from A and B? And what I notice is that there is the binomial 6x minus 5y present in both. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out, and when I take it out, I think I'm left with x squared minus 4y squared. Now, this last step has left us with a second factor, which can be factored even further using the dots technique, difference of two squares. So I'm going to go ahead and factor that. I'm going to start by just rewriting the first binomial, 6x minus 5y, and then x squared minus 4y squared is going to factor as x minus 2y, x plus 2y. I'm going to quickly scan through my three factors to make sure I can't take anything else out, and I can't. And then I look at the instructions, which ask us to select all that apply. So we're trying to identify all of the factors. And the first factor that I notice is letter B, 6x minus 5y. That's the first one. And then answer choice C has x plus 2y, which is our last factor. And then answer choice E has our middle factor, x minus 2y. So this was a problem involving factoring by grouping. I knew that it was going to be factoring by grouping because of the 4 terms, and we were able to establish 3 factors in the end after doing a difference of 2 squares.